Since the dawn of the machine, a question has plagued the brightest minds. How does something so small as man crawl among the stars? In the time of demons, scientific thinking and its descendants ruled. And with their power came new ways of crossing the endless miles between the stars. However, dear listener, in the age of the holy machine, nothing comes for free. No matter the clever tricks the demons conjured from their computing minds, space travel was never easy. It was an art as much as a skill. A jump from one planet to another required immense focus and constant attention. A leap across the stars required Olympian levels of commitment. Everything threatened your life. Stray asteroids, predators in the dark of space, the health of your ship, all of it could snuff out the brief light of human life at any moment if the passengers weren't careful. Agent felt his heart flutter as it always did when looking out of the ship's tight window. The little metal box floated in the vast ocean of nothingness between the grains of sand they called planets. Wiping his brow from the afternoon's work, he looked down at the meager meal he and Satra were portioned for today's rations. The Ordian man cursed the Ozran priests under his breath. Before the trip, he had watched in horror as the lifeless men systematically shaved unnecessary weight from the spacecraft. This weight, to Agent's great dismay, included food, and more importantly, his stims. Cheap bastards. Agent had easily incorporated the insult into his lexicon. In the week since the two men left Ozra for their mission, Agent had too much time to think. It was impossible to ignore the presence of Satra and the priests. Better than the Red Dawn, Agent had concluded, but not by much. Today, the left engine desperately needed a tune-up. The heat of the machine was growing and bleeding into the rest of the small spacecraft. Every day of the journey it had grown hotter. Today it was sweltering inside the cramped chamber, 40 degrees even with the cardio engine in hibernation. The Ort bandit wrung his sweat rag in the fluid recycler. God, how he missed natural water. Agent hadn't made a trek this long in years. He had forgotten in that time about the small things that defined a trillion-kilometer journey. The routines that keep you sane are the same that erode your sanity away. But through all of this hardship, the man smiled to himself. After a week of hard labor and uncountable system checks, the two men had arrived in the Kuiper Belt. Through the window, Agent saw a blue marble as it floated in space. They had arrived in the Jaega system a day ago and were currently hurtling towards the Red Dawn and his city. Just after the midday meal, the two men were treated to the excitement of a small red dot on the window. Within an hour, it had grown enough for the men to make out its shape. The red dot expanded to form a short crimson bar. The tip of the bar glowed against the Milky Way. It reminded Agent of one of his lit stim sticks. Everything reminded him of one of his stim sticks. He closed his eyes and thought of the mission. It's a damn good thing we're going somewhere with alcohol, he said to Satra. The priest characteristically scowled and returned to his work. In another 2 hours, Agent looked towards their destination. The demon had now taken up most of the ship's field of view. The artificial intelligence was as hideous as Agent had remembered. The demon's body breathed a fine mist of spacecraft. Tens of thousands of ships floated towards the machine's shuttle bays. Another stream of ships drifted into space. Agent had forgotten the grandeur of Pecusia's spaceports as they flowed in the sunlight. The megacity was lit from its core by a thin rod of artificial sunlight. The pink and orange light of the morning glowed from it. The docking procedure was the final moment of concentration for the men. Upon landing the spacecraft, Agent gave a loud cry of joy. Even Satra couldn't help but smirk at the end of their long journey. The two men emerged from the cruiser into a monstrously large bay. Agent looked upward to the kilometer-tall ceiling. Another ship was setting down to his left. The ceiling was an austere sight. A jungle of metal sprawled from outer parts of the demon's body. Steel, dirt, grease, and graffiti were crushed together in an eerie fashion. Landing this low in the city was slightly nerve-wracking, but Agent knew it was the best way to avoid undue attention from the Red Dawn's sensors. Agent looked over his shoulder to make sure nobody was listening before checking the privacy sensors on his shell. He was going to have to get used to that. All good. No one was listening. Don't want to jinx it, but I don't think anyone is going to cause trouble with you here, Agent said. Good, Satra replied. Agent shook his head. The priest didn't fall far from the proverbial tree. The men of Azra lived with a surgeon's precision and ego. Agent recalled his father mocking the priests when he was a boy. More stone than flesh, he would always say. Agent looked to his partner in crime as Satra walked towards the elevators a half-kilometer away. Seeing the back of Satra's neck, Agent grimaced. In the time he had known the priest, he had never gotten used to seeing the mark of Satra's demon. A thin golden scar ran down Satra's spine, left there from the chip implant when the priest was 16. To Agent, it was a gilded chain wrapped around the priest's neck. First time on another demon, right? Agent asked the priest. Satra gave Agent a blank stare. I've visited in simulations, but never in person. The elevator doors opened and 2 drunk women poured out of them. The smell of something sweet and foul wafted out of the chamber. Their attire was that of the city's many sex workers. Welcome to hell, Orpheus, Agent said. Satra was silent at the sight of the women. Mornin', ladies, Agent said, tipping his hat to the workers and walking into the lift. When the doors closed, Agent began again. Not looking for your Eurydice, I take it? I hope you know we're not here to indulge ourselves, Satra said. Agent looked to the elevator's highest buttons, desperately wanting to press one. The trip had left him exhausted and aching, what he wouldn't give for the gentle touch of the sweetest masseur he had ever seen. His hand betrayed the devil on his shoulder as it pressed one of the lowest buttons of the elevator. He looked at Satra. What's the word on Melinda, then? The local priests were able to contact her. Your information was solid. Everything is a go. We're set to meet in precisely 16 hours. I wouldn't time it. This city moves on its own clock. To be late in the low levels is expected. To be late in the heights is death. Satra raised an eyebrow. Death? Surely they exaggerate. It's been known to happen. A master kills a slave up there every day, Agent said. The elites in this city are like vipers. Agent pointed to the top buttons of the elevator. They keep these bastards locked down here until they've proven themselves to be cold-blooded. It's our job to get a pass into the Viper's Den. But, unfortunately for you and me, we gotta swim through the sewers to get there. As he said this, the doors to the elevator opened, and the men stepped out into a tiny room. The heat of the small room wafted into the lift. The light in the ceiling flickered as the men stepped into the cramped space. The room's wallpaper was fraying, and the unplaceable stink of these depths pervaded the air. A tired-looking woman behind the desk frowned at them as they waddled towards her booth. Passports, she said impatiently. They showed her their papers. She looked up and pursed her lips at the foreign priest. Destination? A12J19991. Agent read the coordinates from his shells. Step to your right, she said. As she spoke, a door opened and the 2 men stepped through to a narrow hallway. After walking for 30 minutes, the hallway opened to a circular room packed to the gills with people. The chamber was as hot as a sauna and nearly as humid. Not much room to breathe down here, Satra said, bumping into a woman. Yeah, you should see it at rush hour, Agent said. He looked at the hundreds of people going about their day. Did any of them know the angels of death had come? Agent knew that all of them would be killed in the nucleonic weapon's hunger along with the elites. He closed his eyes and swallowed the bitter reality of his mission. He knew the consequences of failure. Billions more would suffer under the regime if the city lived. Agent gave a sigh of relief seeing the inn's sign amongst a corridor of shops. He imagined Satra gave thanks to his god. Getting lost in this underground maze was far from an impossibility. In a moment, the men were squeezing into a room no bigger than a jail cell. The heat from the walls was sweltering. Agent didn't care. His bones ached from the journey, and his mind was about to shut off. The sight of a bed was paradise. Agent lay down as Satra wiped the sweat from his shaved head. Out of the goddamn frying pan, eh? Agent said. The priest swatted away one of the tunnel mites from his bed. This is worse than the engine room, the priest said, looking at the thermometer on his shell. Careful that it don't overheat, Agent said, closing his eyes. I'll remind you that your superiors said I was being wasteful when I asked for a room upgrade. Cheap bastards. If we had listened to those damn bureaucrats, you'd be sleeping in a space not much bigger than a coffin, and it would be 10 degrees hotter, no less, Agent said. This was the upgraded room? Satra asked, looking around. The space was hardly larger than a broom closet, and there was a visible ripple in the air from the heat of the walls. Agent scoffed. You look like you ate a bug, Satra. This is inhumane, the priest said. How could a demon treat his ecology this way? Satra bumped his fist against the cot's low ceiling. He's one of the cruelest demons we have, priest. A monster. The Red Dawn uses power as a religion. If you have power, you're a god in heaven. If you don't, you're a devil in the underworld. Power corrupts, and so does desperation. Nobody wins. Right now, we're at the bottom of a pile of shit that this prick has managed to heap on top of his golden empire. As far as what he's done to my people goes, small living conditions don't scratch the surface. Typical for a demon, though. The priest shook his head. The Demon Lord High Azra grants meaning and security for his followers. These tunnels, they are a prison. Agent rolled his eyes as his accomplice followed the motions of another prayer. Demons consume. That's all they do, the man said to the priest. Azra does not, Satra said. The Lord Demon High is good to his people. He provides for us. He protects us. He gives us home. To even compare the two is... Before Satra could finish the thought, Agent interrupted with a laugh. Was something I said amusing? Satra said. Oh, no, nothing, Agent said, rolling his eyes. Surely Azra has to be the one demon in all this vast cosmos who is working for his people. What's the reason we're here again, Satra? Oh, yes, silicone. The Red Dawn stole a shipment of it, right? If Azra really is that 1 in a million case of a good demon, I'll be damned. Let me tell you this, priest. Your zealotry doesn't mean shit right now. Agent looked around to the leaking sink and the dead bugs on the floor. Not in this landfill. Or did you forget? He can't hear you down here. The Demon Lord High knows all, and he does provide for his men. It's insulting to a high priest to see living conditions like this. You will criticize my lord, but I've never fallen asleep in a cage. Agent smirked. Not one with 4 walls, that is. Don't speak on things you know nothing of. The belly of Azra holds many secrets and much pain, but it is no cage, Satra said tersely. Not for men, anyways. I saw what your demon did to that woman in the temple. It was her memory on the hard drive. It's hardly a secret that Azra's love stretches about as far as your tits hang. In an instant, Satra growled something in the Azran language of the deep. Standing, the man reached out. Before Agent could flinch, the 2-meter-tall man had a giant hand around Agent's throat. A mercenary delivering a sermon to a priest. Rich, don't you think? You'll watch your tongue when you speak of his glory. Primal instinct sprung into action, causing Agent to flail like a trapped animal, clawing at the hand around his neck. After a moment, when it was clear he could go nowhere, Agent stopped thrashing under the man's might. Agent was still hyperventilating from fear and his now restricted windpipe. The Ordian held his cool on a razor's edge, fighting the urge to struggle more for his gun. Agent's face stretched into a mad grin as he looked into the priest's red eyes. I think we found the beast's sore spot. Agent laughed as his sweat pooled on the priest's hands. You will never mention that death again, outsider. Agent wasn't sure if both of them were shaking or if it was just himself. Do I make myself clear? Crystal clear, Agent said. Satra released his grip and laid in his cot. Sleep, outsider, Satra said. You're going to need it.
The last sound the priest made was a deep growl. Agent could feel Satra's hand on his throat still. He was sure the priest wouldn't do anything more tonight. The man would die before upsetting his demon. However, Agent didn't wish to put the man's loyalty to the test.